you ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready.
Right on. Holy cow. We do have a bunch of people logging in. So we're going to be talking about, we got a little bit behind on what we thought the topic was and what the topic actually is. The good news is I've done a couple of listing presentations. And so this, we're going to be dialed in here, and we're going to help you guys figure out exactly how I was getting 93% conversion on my listing appointments. Literally, I would list 50 to 75 houses a month very consistently, not counting REO, not counting my team. That's just me going on regular listing appointments. And I was doing that, working 12 days a month, and I was hitting 93% on cold appointments. So essentially, if I went on an appointment that was a FSBO or expired or somebody I didn't know, somebody that was not in my sphere of influence, I had a 93% chance of actually listing the house and using the presentation we'll talk about today. So that being said, it would be really helpful because I know like Dan is sharing this. And Dan, are you sharing it or is Noelle sharing it?
I'm sharing it.
You're sharing it. Okay. So we're going to share this in the lab. What's that?
I'll tag you both on it.
Perfect. So we're going to be sharing this into the Lab Coats group. So Dan will tell us when we're live in the group. And just so you guys know, if you guys want to put your comments here in the chat or in the questions and answers, we'll do the best we can to get to all your questions here. And we'll also be answering questions that are asked there in the Lab Coat Agents group. So super excited. And Noelle, dude, thank you for doing this. I know that Nick and Tristan are both sick today. So super cool of you to fill in for those guys.
We are live.
They are both ill this week, and I am probably going to get a lecture from you, Mr. Hellickson, but I don't have an actual listing presentation. I've made it this far without one, and that is kind of my presentation, that I don't have a presentation. So school me as to why I should use a presentation.
Well, it's really interesting it's really interesting you say that, Noelle, because I don't use a presentation either. And so here's where I'm going with this. I use a checklist. I have a 44-point listing appointment checklist that I use on every listing appointment that keeps me on track and ensures that I'm having the conversations that I need to have and that I'm not getting sidetracked and that I don't forget anything I need to go over. But I don't sit there like I don't have an electronic presentation. I don't have a flip chart or anything like that. I have a very, very specific checklist that every single time I follow that checklist, and it works like clockwork. So I'm curious, are you doing something similar or do you just show up and wing it? You literally are showing up and winging it.
I am. I kind of, that's
killing me.
Well, I have stuff that I can use, but for me, it has worked really well just to show up with my laptop and a smile and cater it to whoever I'm with, right?
Okay, for those of us that aren't adorable like you, like I show up and just try and get by on my wit and a smile, they're going to be like, pound sand, brother. Like you show up, you smile at them, they're like, where do I sign? That's great.
Well, you know, I'll ask questions of the people before I meet with them so that I've kind of game planned in my head what I'm going to say, how it's going to go and whatnot. But yeah, I definitely don't have a 44-point checklist that I am bringing with me. So I want to hear how that works for you. What is it? Is it something that you have on your iWatch here, which I'm guessing is no? You know, what does that look like and how does that work?
No, I have an actual, I'm old school. So one of the things that I always give people a hard time about is, you know, everybody wants to have electronic this and automated that and blah, 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 blah. Right. And all that's great. And I'm all about automation and technology and all that stuff. I really am. That being said, I'm not going to allow technology to cost me money. And what I mean by that, I'm not going to allow technology to screw up my ability to get a $10,000 or $15,000 paycheck or whatever a typical listing pays in your market. So Noelle, I know you're in the frozen tundra up there in the cold part of the world, but they still have decent sized checks up there, right? Like what's a listing worth to you?
Well, you know, our average list price up here is about $265. So, you know, $7,000.
So $7,000. Now, $7,000, that's a lot of money, right? I mean, that's not a little amount of money. That's a pretty good sized check. So here's the deal. If I'm going to go to a listing appointment and my goal is to get this $7,000 check, well, by golly, I'm going to do what it takes to make sure I get that freaking listing. Well, how am I going to do that? One, I'm not going to carry I mean, if I have an iPad, which I don't carry an iPad or a tablet or anything like that, because guess what happens? Stuff runs out of batteries. Technology fails. You drop it on the way in the house, it shatters the screen or breaks the cable, whatever. Stuff freaking happens. And now what? Now I don't get my $7,000 because my couple $100 piece of technology dropped the ball? No. No, not going to allow that to happen. And so I do everything on paper, and I make sure that, and here, let me back up. The baby boomer generation, right? People that are my age and older, and I'm not a baby boomer, just so you guys know. So before you guys start calling me a baby boomer, I'm not that old. I'm getting there, but I'm not that old. But that being said, they have no use for your freaking technology. They're not interested in your electronic signatures. And I love it when people say, "Oh, but Michael, I do everything electronic." Well, you know what? That's why you're not listing as many houses as you should. And so let's talk about, how do I list more houses? How do I get more out of that appointment? And first and foremost, I'm going to have everything on paper. I'm going to make sure I've got every stitch of paper I need, and I'm going to carry 4 blue ink pens. Now, this is another piece. This is everything I do is down to a finite system, right? So by carrying 4 blue ink pens, that's 1 for me, 1 for Mr. Seller, 1 for Mrs. Seller, and a spare in case I run out of ink, right? Very important. I want to make sure that nobody runs out of ink. I want to make sure that it doesn't take me too much time. And by the way, I see we've got a question in the chat right now, and I'm looking for this. Dan, could you do me a favor? I'm looking for this on Facebook. I can't find it. If you could tag me. Oh, there we go. He just tagged me in it. Okay. So that being said, I will put a link to the checklist. If you guys want to be able to get a copy of the checklist, just follow this link, and I'll just give you my checklist for free. I don't care. It's super easy. And there's actually a video of me walking you through how to do this also right there on the same place. But let me just put this into the chat on Lab Coat Agents, and there's where you can get that 44 point. Oh, hold on, I was replying to Dean there.
Nope, I see it there.
You see it there?
Yep, it's on there.
All right, let's do this one more time in the main section there. All right, so here's the deal. Let me walk you through how this works first, right? And my pleasure, you're welcome. And Justin, it should be in there in just a second. If you look at the post in Lab Coat Agents, that checklist will be there. So here's the deal. Success on the listing appointment starts before you get to the listing appointment, okay? So let's rock and roll through this. So first, I got to get my head in state. I got to be thinking when I show up, I got to be ready to go. So I got to be excited. I got to be in the right frame of mind. And Tony Robbins calls it getting in state. Now, we do this in a lot of ways. We do this with affirmations. We do this with incantations. Incantations being kind of like a full body version of affirmations, right? So Noelle, I'm sure you don't stand in front of the mirror and say stuff like, "I'm good enough. I'm smart enough."
Franken is from Minnesota, so sometimes I do it.
So you do the Stuart Smalley once in a while? That's awesome. I love it. Well, here's the deal. That being said, the affirmations I'll do, like on the way to the appointment, I'm driving down the road, I'm in my car, and I'm saying things like, "I'm going to get the listing at my price, and for the term I want, and for the commission I want," all that kind of stuff. But I'm really getting excited. Like if you're driving on the side of the road, next to me on the road, you're looking at me and you're saying, "Oh my gosh, this guy's a freaking psycho," right? Well, that's good. That's a good sign. That means I'm doing it right. So that being said, when I get there, I'm pretty jazzed up. I'm pretty excited, right? Then when I'm in my car, before I even get out of my car, I take a picture of my checklist. And the reason is it's got the client's contact information printed in the upper left-hand corner. That's really important because when I get inside, I've got to be able to compare that information and make sure that it's accurate. The worst thing that can happen is I don't double check that information. I get back to my office after having signed everything and all that, and then eventually we get an offer. We go to email them the offer, and I got the wrong email address. Makes my whole team look like morons, right? Or I've got their name spelled wrong, right? Like by one letter or whatever. Like that's just an amateur move that can be avoided by doing this from the very beginning. All right. So now when I get to the house and I've taken the picture of my checklist, I get out of my car and I take a picture of the front of the house. Now, Noelle, this is really important. Are you doing this on your listing appointments now?
Yes, mentally.
Mentally. No. You got to have a camera. Now watch this. Here you go. So I want you to literally have an old school SLR camera around your neck, and it can be digital, I don't care, but there needs to be a camera around your neck on a strap, right? Why do I want that? Because first of all, one thing I have to have before I can put this listing in the computer, I have to have a picture of the front of the house, no matter what. And I get it. Oh, here's Noelle right here. But Michael, we use professional photographers here in the frozen up north tundra, right? Okay. I get it, right? And I'm cool with that. It's okay that you use professional photographers. The key, though, is that you want to have that picture of the front of the house no matter what. Because if I go back to my office and they call me to say we want to think about it overnight, I need that thing to already be in the computer.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I actually just had this conversation with my team last week or 2 weeks ago that coming soon's even for that, right? You do need to have a photo, and you don't want to be wasting your time driving back out to the house to be able to just have a photo for coming soon.
That's exactly right. 100% agree. And so the first thing you do is you take that photo of the exterior of the house. Then you walk up to the house. Now, what you got to do is you got to be prepared, right? You got to be mentally in state. You got to remember their name. This is important, and a lot of people screw this up. But you've got to remember their name, and you got to remember who referred them to you. Because and watch this. Noelle, let me ask you this. If I could show you in 30 seconds or less how to get the listing 93% of the time by just doing what I'm going to tell you in the first 30 seconds, would you do whatever I told you to do in the first 30 seconds?
Yes, but I'm surprised you weren't asking me that while nodding.
She knows where I'm going with this. That's right. Okay. She's giving me a hard time because I use a lot of NLP, but it really works, right? So the first 30 seconds is the most critical time in the listing presentation because they're going to make a decision in that first 30 seconds whether or not they're going to list with you. Now, what's really scary is they might make the decision that, yes, I'm going to list with you, but you can screw it up at any point in time during the presentation. It's really easy to screw this up. So the key is don't freaking screw it up. Well, how do I not screw it up? Follow the checklist. That's how you don't screw it up. All right, so here's what you're going to do. So let's see if you can see this. Can you hear me okay back here?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so when I walk up there, I've got my camera around my neck. I've got my folder, right? So let's just say, I'll give you an example. Let's say I've got a folder that looks something like this, and we'll just use my little protein drink here as my key box. We're going to pretend this is a key box, and this is my listing packet. So
did that say boost? What did that say on there?
This one's Core Power. This is the Core Power by Fairlife protein shake. 42 grams of protein in a lactose-free environment, right there. All right. So we're not a commercial for these guys. Anyway, that being said, I'll stick this under here, and I take that whole thing. I have the key box with me. By the way, Noelle, are you taking the key box with you on every listing appointment? No, Noelle, dude, you got to do it. Come on, you're killing me, Noelle. Okay, so I'm going to take that as a big no. So you guys, if I'm serious about listing this house, I need to have the key box with me in the house. Same thing with the listing contract. I need to have that in my hand when I go inside. Every time I got to go out to my car for something, that's time that they're second guessing their decision, and that the husband comes running out and says, "Oh, but Michael, we want to think about it." Well, and dude, that's the worst thing that can happen, because guess what think about it means? Think about it means you're not getting the listing. So you cannot give them opportunities for that. So take this stuff into the house with you every single time. All right. So I take my key box and I tuck it under my listing packet. It goes right here against my body. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but it's kind of right here so that Mrs. Seller cannot see it yet, right? I don't want Mrs. Seller to freak out yet. I do want her to freak out, but not yet. That comes in just a moment. So then I'm hiding it from her now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock on the door. And I got to remember my initial script. This is important. And I'm remembering the name, remembering I got to make eye contact, remember the color of her eyes, all that kind of stuff. She answers the door. "Hey, Mrs. Seller, it's Michael Hellickson. I'm so glad Susie referred you to me. Hey, do you mind if I get a few pictures before we get started on the paperwork?" And I literally blow right past her. And I don't know if you can tell, but when I was shaking her hand, I pull her or his hand, depending on who answers the door. I pull their hand behind me, and I don't let go of their hand until it's behind me. Because now it's really awkward for them to try and keep up with me, right? So I can just go right in, go right on past, and I take control of the situation right off the bat. Now, this is uncomfortable for a lot of agents, and I can understand that. If you're not strong enough to do this, then you need to, at the very least, be strong enough to make them get you a glass of water. Now, you have to get into control in this situation. They got to work for you. Noelle's like, "What? Really? Weird. Okay, I'm not used to this." Dude, I've done this on literally thousands of listing appointments. And at one point in time, you guys, I had 750 listings in active and pending status. Trust me, this stuff works. Okay? It's not complicated. The key is you've got to be confident in you. Your confidence will create their confidence. If you are scared or you are nervous, they will be nervous and scared. If you are confident, they will be confident. All right. So I go right on past. Now, I will tell you that, did you notice when in the script, Noelle, what did I say? What words did I use that caught your attention?
Do you mind if I grab some photos? Did you just say that?
I said, do you mind if I take a few photos before we get started on the paperwork? Yes. And I also, before that, I said, I'm so glad Susie referred you to us. So the reason for that is I want to build a tiny bit of instant rapport as quickly as I can. Once I can get that little bit of instant rapport, and it's not strong, it's not super strong rapport, but guess what? If they're interviewing multiple agents, which most people are, they're not going to remember who referred you to them. So you have to remind them. The other thing that I did at that moment was I looked her square in the eye, or him, whoever answered the door. I looked them square in the eye and I noticed their eye color. That's really important. You have to make eye contact. And if you don't recognize their eye color, you haven't made sufficient eye contact yet. So you got to gaze into their eyes long enough to make that connection. All right. So then I'm going to begin walking through the house. Now this is very, very important. All right. So when I start walking through the house, she's going to immediately follow me, right? And she's freaking out. She's like, because I'll start heading for the stairs, like I'm going to go upstairs. And what she's doing is she's saying, oh, but Michael, don't you want to start in the kitchen? But before she even does that, what is she saying about the photos? Oh, my house is such a
mess.
A mess, right? And so she doesn't want me taking photos of the mess. And so my immediate response is, oh, no, Noelle, it's okay. This is just for my information. This is not for the marketing, but this is just for my information. Don't worry. I do this all the time. I've got a system for it. And I keep going. Okay. So she's freaking out at this point. Then she tries to pull me into the kitchen, right? She really wants to be in the kitchen because what? That's her safe place, right? That's her domain. She owns that. That's the heart of the house where she's in control. And I'm not going to allow that to happen. The place I want to end up is the kitchen, but never start in the kitchen, because as soon as you go in the kitchen, the discussion begins. And I don't want discussion happening yet, because if discussion happens now, I haven't seen the house. So all they're going to have is concern after concern after concern, and a lot of concerns about, well, you haven't seen whatever in the house. So as an example now, I'll just continue upstairs and she'll follow, and she'll say, well, don't you want to start in the kitchen? I say, no, I do this all the time. I've got a system. I always start upstairs. Is there anybody in bathrooms or bedrooms that I need to be concerned about? And she'll say no. And I'll say, fantastic. And they will both follow me upstairs. Perfect. All right. Now that they're following me upstairs, I can have the conversation with them as we're walking upstairs that will get me into rapport. So Noelle, what are you doing to get in rapport on a listing appointment right now?
Well, actually, I do. I in my own demeanor, I do a lot of these things that you're saying. So, except for minus taking the photos, I haven't actually gotten that aggressive. But just this week, even though I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm still going on listing appointments. And I went on one, and it was an older couple. I walked right in and started giving myself a tour of the home and had them follow me throughout the house and give me information. And then, yes, we ended up in the kitchen at the end of it. And that is what works. And so I totally agree with that.
It really does. Now, I'll tell you this. You can get away with whatever you want to get away with because you're freaking Noelle. So, you don't need to worry about can I get away with it or not, because you totally can. Believe me, if a schmuck like me can get away with it, you will have no problem. So that said, you're right. Walking through the house in the very beginning is mission critical, and making sure they follow you and walk through with you is also mission critical. Here's something else you need to do. I want to brote them to death during this first period of time when we're walking through the house. Now, what does that mean? Brot, write this down. It's B-R-O-T. That's the German word for bread. Okay. So bread, it's the bread of life for a salesperson. Okay. What does that mean? Building relationships on trust. Building relationships on trust. Brot. Okay. So I've got to build this relationship on trust. Now, how is that going to work? I'm going to use the Ford technique like a madman. Do you guys remember what Ford is? Anybody know what Ford is? Type into your screen if you know what Ford stands for. F-O-R-D. What does Ford stand for? Type it into the chat in the Facebook post right now. I know some of you are thinking, fix or repair daily, found on road dead. Yeah, those aren't the ones I'm looking for. Can anybody else remember what Ford stands for? Type it in. I don't see anybody. Dale Kessler, Sunit are both watching. What's up, guys? I see Tristan's watching. Sorry you're sick, brother. Hope you start feeling better. All right, so type this into your screen, guys. What does Ford stand for? F-O-R-D. I can't believe nobody's got it yet. We got a boatload of people watching and nobody's got it. Here it is. Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. Now, here's what you do. So it's FORD. So here's what you got to do. You're going to ask a lot of open-ended question about their family, their occupation, their recreation, and dreams. So look at that. Tari got it. John got it. So it's family, occupation, recreation, dreams, guys. So what I do is I ask open-ended questions, and I get them doing 90% of the talking. And for those of you that know me, you know that's really hard for me to do because, normally I do all the talking. I know, right? Noelle's like, no way. No. So, but you got to get them doing 90% of the talking at this point. And it's hard. It's not easy. It's really counterintuitive, but you got to make it happen. And so then, because here's the other thing. If I can get them talking now, when it's my turn to talk, when we're sitting down at the kitchen table, they're not doing the talking. They're just answering yes or no, and they're signing. That's all I want them to do at that point. So I'm going to get all the talking out of their system while we're walking around. So we do that. We get the talking out of their system, and I look at every nook and cranny of the house. I take pictures of all the good stuff. I take pictures of the bad stuff. I make sure to verbally address the good things and the bad things, because the last thing I don't want to get downstairs and have Mrs. Seller, and it's always Mrs. Seller, who says something like, oh, but Michael, our house is worth $400,000 more than our neighbor's house because even though they've got more square footage and a bigger lot, we have ceramic tile in the master bathroom. And I'll say something at that point like, Noelle, I totally understand, and you're right. I love your ceramic tile. Now, and I did notice it because it's my job to notice these things. In fact, I even noticed the cracked tile on the backsplash in the master bathroom. But don't worry, it's not going to affect your value by that much. Now, you see me shaking my head back and forth. Noelle likes that. So what happens now, right? So essentially, I verbally slapped Mrs. Seller, right? And at some point during the presentation, you have to do this. And why? First of all, ignore him. He doesn't matter, right? Why? Why do I say that? Because he's not in charge. Freaking she's in charge. And any guy that doesn't understand that the wife is in charge is delusional. She is freaking in charge. And here's the thing. We have a rule at our house, Noelle, you'll like this. At the Hellickson home, any man that says he wears the pants in the family probably lies about other things too.
That's a good one.
That's our rule. And so at the end of the day, you've got to make sure that you've got her on your side. So, but at the same time, she has to understand you're a professional, you're in charge, and you're not going to be intimidated, nor are you going to be questioned because you know best. And you're not doing this in an arrogant way. You've got to be very nice about it. And that's a very fine line. You got to get used to that. But as you develop the skills for this and you learn how to do this properly, you will get her in line as well. So watch this. So far, how many of you, and in the Facebook, the people who are watching on Facebook, type in there, if you have taken one thing so far that you will actually implement, type it into your screen. I want to see what one thing so far will you actually implement as I move forward. All right, so we get done with the tour, right? We've gone through the house. We've done the Ford technique so that we can grow, right? So we can build relationships on trust. We've done our family, occupation, recreation, and dreams questions. Now we get down to the kitchen. Here's a couple of rules. Number one, never, ever, ever sit on anything soft or comfortable. Ever. Always, 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 always sit at the kitchen table if at all possible. If there's no kitchen table, you freaking stand at the countertop. If there's no counter, you do this on the hood of your car. But you never, ever, ever, ever sit on anything soft or comfortable. I'll tell you why in a moment. There's lots of reasons why. But I'm going to sit down, and ideally, I want Mrs. Seller to my right. This is really important. Can anybody guess why? Why do I want Mrs. Seller on my right? Because what are most people, right or left-handed? Type in your screen. Are most people right-handed or left-handed? I got all these people on lab coats watching this thing, and nobody's typing into their screen. If you're watching and you're live, type into your screen. Go ahead. What are you going to say, Noelle?
They're scared to respond here because they don't know.
I think they are. I think I'm intimidating somehow. I don't know why. Noelle typed it in. Most people are right-handed, right? Okay, so if I see some of the people on the live webinar are typing it in too. You're right. Most people are right-handed, which means that if you're right-hand dominant, think about this. This is a neuro-linguistic programming technique. If you're right-hand dominant, that's your strong side. I do not want to be on her right side. What I want is I want her to be on my right side, which puts me in an advantageous, stronger position than her. This is very important. I know this sounds silly and small, but it matters, okay? It's just like when, I saw a video recently of people talking about appropriate touch in a listing appointment. Now, I'm going to tell you, until you've been doing this a very, very, very long time, and you've been on at least, I'm going to say at least 500 or more listing appointments, you have no business touching anybody in any way other than to shake their hand. That is it. Because I'll tell you what, like Noelle, if you came to my house, right, and you were going to do a listing appointment for us, and you came over and you shook my hand with one hand, and then you put your hand on my shoulder, or maybe you came in for like a half hug or anything like that, or worse yet, you came in for a full hug. What's my wife doing at this point in time?
Oh yeah, I learned that lesson very early on in my career, because the wife then won't want to work with me.
Oh no, they won't just not want to work with you. They will want to kill you.
Yeah,
right?
It's true. You got to be careful when you're touching clients.
Seth Nielsen's like, oh shoot, like, I think I've been doing it wrong. But here's the deal. Like, you got to really be careful with this, you guys. Touching can be dangerous in so many ways, and we could go down an inappropriate line on there, but we're not. We're focusing on really what I'm saying here is, regardless, just stick with a handshake at this point. Now, that being said, I've got her on my right-hand side. I'm shaking hands. I take my key box, right? So remember, I get inside. I've got my key box with me. I'm going to take that key box and I'm going to stand it on the table right between me and Mrs. Seller. Now, let me tell you something. This is where, watch it. This is exactly what happens. I wish you could see both Noelle and me at the same time on this video. It's too bad we can't go gallery view. But check it out. This is what she's going to do. She's going to go, and her eyes are like super focused on this. What she's saying in her head is, this stuff just got real, right? She's freaking out. She's like, oh my gosh. And I'm saying subconsciously, without saying a word, I'm saying essentially, yeah, this stuff did just get real. I mean business. I'm here to list your house. I'm not playing around, and neither should you be, because guess what? We're making this freaking happen. And so that said, now I get right into my checklist, and I follow that checklist to a T. Boom, boom, boom. I go right down the list. And I don't deviate from my checklist. And what this does is a couple of things. One, it shows them that I'm organized, shows them that I have a plan and that I'm sticking to it, and it keeps them from getting off onto side tangents. So I literally am checking stuff off as I go, and they can see that. They can see how far into the checklist I am, which also gives them hope that there's an end to this listing appointment, because guess what? They don't want to be here. They don't want me here. I'm a necessary freaking evil. Believe me, the last thing they want to spend their afternoon or evening doing is chit-chatting with a real estate agent. All they care about is, I got to get my house sold, just solve my freaking problem and get out of my house so I can go back to watching Wheel of Fortune, right? I mean, that's literally what they do. Or maybe it's not Wheel of Fortune. I don't know. Maybe it's Jeopardy if you're smart, but I don't know, whatever. That being said, first thing I'm going to do, once I sit down, I got to control the environment. And so how do I do that? How do I control the environment right off the bat? Noelle, have you ever dealt with this on a listing appointment?
Well, I mean, I think I just kind of tend to naturally do it. And so I haven't actually physically sat down and thought about it. But now that it's super funny that you're saying all these things, because I actually did every single one of these things at the listing appointment that I went to. The wife was sitting on my right. The husband was sitting on my lap. We were sitting at the kitchen counter, and I went through what I had to say, and, I got the listing. But at the end of the day, what you're saying is very true. I've just never written it out.
And the key is, and see, that's the reason we're having this conversation, is because for most people, it does not come naturally. For most agents, if they don't have a script to follow, they're in trouble. And I'm telling you guys right now, anybody, Noelle, have you ever been on a plane, on an airplane? I know you have. Of course you've been on an airplane, right? So let me ask you this. Do you think the pilot had a checklist?
Absolutely.
Do you hope he did?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm saying. And so you guys, they want somebody who's organized. They don't want the pilot that shows up and he's like, well, we're going to see if we can get this baby off the ground. We'll see how it goes. Did this last week for the first time. Didn't go so well, but I'm pretty confident today. I bet we'll make it off the ground just fine. Right? Like, they don't want that guy. What they want is the check. Dan, that's a great book, Checklist Manifesto. That's actually a great book. But the point is, they want somebody who's organized. They want somebody who's going to confidently lead them down the correct path to get them what they want, which is to get their house sold for the least or the most amount of money and the least amount of headache to them. And so that said, I've got to control the environment, because if I don't control the environment, guess what? they aren't going to be paying attention. And specifically, I'm talking about kids and pets and TVs and radios. So I want to shut all that stuff off. So if they got a TV or a radio going, first thing I'm going to say is, hey, Noelle, you know, would it be okay with you if we shut the TV off? I've got ADD and I get distracted easily. Would that be all right with you?
Sure.
And just like Noelle, what are they going to do? They're going to laugh and they're going to be like, and I'm going to go, no, really, like I got really bad ADD. I'm a real estate agent. We all have, it's like a requirement to get a license. You have to have ADD. And so and they get it, right? So then they shut the TV off. Then with the kids and the pets, this is critical. I got to get the kids and the pets in the other room. Get them freaking gone. And I'll tell you, here's how I do it. And then I'll tell you what happens when you don't do it. So what I'll say to her is I'll say, hey, Noelle, would it be okay with you if we put the pets in the other room and the kids in the kennel just for a little bit while we talk? And Noelle's like, did he misspeak? No, that's literally what I say. I'll say kids, pets in the other room and kids in the kennel. And they'll laugh, right? They're like, ha, ha. And I'm like, no, seriously, like get rid of them. And they, and so now I've got their full attention. I kid you not. I was at a listing appointment one time. Gal had a full-size poodle. And I'm going through my listing presentation, and literally within 3 minutes of sitting down to go over the paperwork, freaking poodle bites my left hand. And literally the entire presentation would not let go. Didn't just bite and release. This dog bit my left hand and held my left hand through the entire presentation. The entire time I've got my hand in this dog's mouth. But I was not skipping a beat. I was not going to take the chance of getting out of rapport with her because I knew I was in rapport already. So there's no way I was going to allow myself to get out of rapport with her just because this freaking dog's trying to get me sideways, right? And I knew it was doing it on purpose. Like this dog had a plan, right? So it's not true.
I'm thinking of a movie trailer right now for you, Michael. Like,
oh, yeah?
The guy whose dog would not let go of his hand. Yes, I can see it.
You should have seen it. I mean, seriously, my hand, and it didn't break the skin, but it hurt like a mother. I mean, it did. It didn't feel good at all. And the stupid thing's drooling all over me. My hand was all gross and slimy by the time it got out of its mouth. And literally, I got the entire end of the listing presentation. I looked at the gal, and after she had signed everything, I'd say, hey, can I ask you just one more favor before I leave? And she's like, yeah, sure, what? I'm like, could you get your dog to let go of my hand? And she looks down. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, oh, it's totally okay. It happens all the time. Son of a gun, or kill that dog. Yeah, it was crazy, right? Anyway, the good news is I got the listing. All right, so.
Bad news is you got some kind of
What's that?
I said bad news is you had to get shots after that appointment.
Oh, dude, if it had broke, it didn't break the skin. Otherwise, I would have gone and got a rabies shot. The dog wasn't like mean. It was just stupid. Like, I don't know what the deal was. It was weird. But anyway, that being said, so I've controlled the environment. I got the kids and the pets taken care of. Now I go into my listing presentation. Now this is very important. And actually, let's take a big step back. You guys, when you show up to a listing presentation, you need to be prepared. Here's the concern that I have for most agents. Most agents aren't prepared, and they think they are, but they're not. Now, Noelle, say something because I want them to see you on camera for a second.
Something.
All right, I love that. Now, you guys got a chance to just see her real quick. The camera switched over to her. So look at how nicely she's dressed right now. Look at how professional Noelle looks right now. You guys, in this business, there are so many people that dress like slobs. Now, you don't have, I wear a suit and a tie. That's how I roll. I always know that nobody's going to be offended by the fact that I'm wearing a suit and tie, right? Nobody's going to not list with me because I'm in a suit and tie. And you guys can say all you want. Oh, but my sphere of influence or my crowd, they're more casual, blah, blah. Listen, you might say that, but let me tell you something. They want you to be a professional for them. They want you to treat it seriously. I'll give you an example. I've got a very good friend. I won't mention who he is because he's probably watching right now. He's a big agent, and I'll tell you, he's in California. Makes a lot of money, does very, very well. Guy goes on a listing appointment with somebody he's known for 20 years. This guy's a baller agent. This guy's no joke, right? He's a tier 5 agent. He's a guy. Goes on this listing appointment wearing, apparently they have, really high-end $100 plus flip-flops out there. So he's got this really nice pair of flip-flops on. He's got a pair of Tommy Bahama shorts, like these really nice Tommy Bahama shorts, if there is such a thing, and a really nice Robert Graham shirt on, right? So for his part of the world, that's dressed up, right? So he's thinking, man, slam dunk, I'm going to roll in like a baller. I'm going to get this listing. It's $1.5 million listing. He's known this gal for 20 years. He doesn't get the listing. You want to know why? Because, and she later shared, what's that?
She didn't think he took it seriously.
That's exactly why. She felt disrespected, and she shared this with his partner later. She didn't tell him directly, but she shared it with somebody else later, and his partner found out that she felt disrespected because he didn't take her or the appointment seriously, so she listed with somebody else, and he lost the commission on a $1.5 million listing. You guys, dress like you mean it. Dress like you're going to a job interview, because you are. And ladies, do me a favor. Can you all please remember what we are and are not selling? Right? I mean, there's some ladies out there that need to hear that. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend you, but guys, be professional. Dress like Noelle, okay? Ladies, look, just dress like Noelle. So, all right. So then I've also got to be prepared with the right stuff. I got to have my, Vicky's like, amen, yes. All right. So you guys, here's part of the problem. I got to make sure that I've got the physical, mechanical stuff that I need, right? So I need to have my listing presentation, my listing packet. I need to have the listing agreement. And in my listing agreement, I want everything pre-filled out as best possible. In other words, I want it to be not house specific. So I'm not going to fill anything into the paperwork that is specific to that address. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to have my MLS ID pre-filled in. I'm going to have my commission filled in. I'm going to have the expiration date filled in. I'm going to have, all of the stuff, my name filled in, so that I can streamline this appointment as much as possible. It's like the 4 blue ink pens. By having 4 blue ink pens on every appointment, I save 8 minutes on every appointment. Now, 8 minutes doesn't sound like a lot to you, but to a guy like me that's big into efficiency and that uses every minute very efficiently, it's a big deal. Here's why. Because with that 8 minutes, if I go on 10 appointments, that's 80 minutes or an hour and 20 minutes of my life I get back. And you know what I do with it? I can use that time to go out to my car and make freaking follow-up calls and set more appointments. That's how I go on 6 to 8 appointments a day, because in the car, I'm making 115 to 125 follow-up calls to set those appointments. I don't need an ISA for that. By the way, I'm better than my ISA at setting those appointments anyway. No offense to them. They do a great job, but agents are better at setting appointments than ISAs are when they pick up the freaking phone. Noelle, would you agree with that?
When they pick up the phone, that is the key, right? You have to make so many calls to get so many appointments.
That's right. You hit the nail on the head. And the problem is most agents are either too lazy or too whatever to pick up the phone. So you guys, you want to make more money? Start picking up the phone. And I'm not going to tell you to call FSBOs and expireds, because guess what? I didn't call FSBOs or expireds the last 15 years of my career. And during that last 15 years of my career, I was doing more business than any agent on the planet. So you don't need to do FSBOs and expireds. What you need to do is you need to develop and automate, develop and automate your lead generation, lead follow-up, and lead conversion. So I want to have at least, in today's world, I'd say I want to have at least 25 lead sources on my listing side that are kicking off listings. And I don't need lead sources that kick off 50 listings a month. What I need is, I need 50 lead sources that each kick off 1 or 2 listings a month. And you start doing that math, and you're starting to make a lot of money. And so, but you got to make sure you get very consistent with it. All right. So I'm in the appointment. Okay, go ahead, Noelle. Do you have a question?
No, I'm just at 25 lead sources. That's another topic for another video. I mean,
it is, and we can definitely do that. And by the way, if you guys want the checklist again, we'll post it again. But it's in the Facebook group if you want to get the checklist. And if you want to see a video of me walking you through step by step how to do it. That being said, let's talk now about the close and about how to get them to sign the paperwork. I know we've only got a few minutes left, so I want to make sure we cover this. So I go through all my checklist. I have all the conversations with them. I have all the difficult conversations with them as well. I set proper expectations, and I go over if I have to, if I've got a high C, like somebody who's just ridiculously organized, like an engineer or something like that, and as painful as it can be, I will go through my marketing plan if I absolutely have to. I only have to do that about 10% of the time, but I'll do it about 10% of the time. I love it. I see Noelle taking frantic notes here. I love it. So you guys, here's what I would do. Once you get to the end, what you're going to do is you're going to ask the world's greatest closing line. Okay. And Noelle, you've seen me do this before. So this works every time, you guys. Now look me in the eye. If you're watching on the video here, you need to look at me in the eye on the video. And this is exactly what I do every single time. I look Mr. and Mrs. Seller in the eyes and I say, are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? And I'm shaking my head back and forth. And what do? They start shaking their head back and forth. Now, I see Noelle's fighting it. She doesn't want to do it right now. But I know that you have to consciously not do it, right? I know that's what you're doing because it is compelling. Did you guys know that your subconscious mind is far more powerful than your conscious mind and cannot tell the difference between reality and what you tell it to believe? So when you use these NLP techniques, it's compulsory on their part that they follow suit. They don't have a choice. It's hardwired into their psyche. And so we're taking advantage of that hardwiring. We're hacking the hardwiring of their brain, if you will, and getting them to do what we need them to do to get to the conclusion that we know they want to get to, but we want to make sure they get to it with us. And so there's a couple of things that you can do to stack the cards in your favor. Here, one of them is that closing line. Are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? All right, next. Throughout, look at this. Vicky Lemon's watching, and she says, she heard me speak at Lab Code Agents event recently at LCA1. She says, I did that after returning from LCA1 to my husband, and it worked, LOL. I love it. I'm not going to ask what you got out of him by doing that, but I'm very excited that you're practicing on your husband and your kids, and that's exactly what you should do. There are no better guinea pigs on this planet than our family. So good for you, Vicki. That's awesome. So that being said, I asked the closing question. Are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? Now, leading up to that, throughout the entire appointment, I've been inducing a yes state, right? So I'm literally going to get them to say yes 7 to 12 times on the appointment. I'm also avoiding certain words, like I'll never say the word think. You need to abolish the word think from your vocabulary. It no longer exists. Instead of think, I want you to use the word feel. Get them feeling, because if we get people to act out of emotion, what do? They take action now. If they think about it, that means they're not going to list with us today. We're going to have to come back. And if we come back later, all we're doing is previewing a stronger agents listing. That's all we're doing, right? So the other word that I want to use is today. I want to use the word today 7 to 12 times on this listing appointment. It's very important. All right, by the way, if you're doing this, tell me, which of these words are you using on a regular basis? Guys, I'd love to know if any of you are using any of these on a regular basis. All right, so I'm using the word think, I'm using the word today, I'm getting them to say yes over and over and over again. This stuff really freaking works, you guys. All right, so then when they say, let's say I ask the question, are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? And they say yes, there are. Okay, great. Then let's talk about what those questions are. So the first question they almost always come up with, Noelle, what is it?
What's your listing fee?
Yeah, or will you reduce your commission, right? In some manner, they're asking, will I cut my commission? And the very first time they ask that, because you got to understand, you guys, more often not, concerns are actually just a question. Objections are not objections. They're just a question. The problem is that agents freak out and they treat it like an objection, but it's not. It's just a question. So here's what you have to do. Treat it like just that. Treat it like a question. So, Noelle, no. Are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? That's literally what my response would be. Now, if it's a serious question, if it's a serious concern, Noelle will come back to me and say, no, really, will you cut your commission? And then I'll have to go into one of my other. And I've got 4 or 5 objection handlers for all the big objections and at least 2 or 3 for all the other ones. But it is really important that you guys have multiple objection handlers for each objection. All right, so that being said, let's say I get past that. They will have more objections. The problem with most agents is you guys aren't resolving concerns often enough. Too often they give you 1 or 2 concerns and you give up and you just kind of roll over and you move on. You cannot do that, you guys. You're going to need to resolve somewhere between 7 and 10 objections before you get them to sign the paperwork. It's really important. Now, if you've done a great job in your checklist, the number of questions and or objections they have will be reduced because you will have covered that stuff through your listing presentation. Again, that's why I have a checklist, because I don't ever want to forget any of those things. All right, next. Once I get them, and let me back up. The worst time, the most objections I've ever had on one appointment, I had one guy 12 times. 12 times he's like, yeah, I've got an objection, so or a question, here, what about this and what about that? What about this? What about that? On the 12th time, this guy literally looks at me and he says, you're not going to stop asking that until I say no, are you? My response was super simple. I said, nope. Are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? And guess what? He says, this is exactly how he did it. He goes, nope, where do I sign? And he literally signed it. So, but I got the listing, right? Okay, now when you start having people sign stuff, never, ever, ever start with the listing the listing agreement. You always, always, always start with the property disclosure form. It's the easiest form for them to sign. Why? Because they have to sign it whether they work with you or somebody else, and you're not going to take it with you. So all the time, what I'll do is I'll say, so Noelle, this is the property disclosure form. Now, this is required by state law, regardless of who you list it with. And I'm not going to take this with me when I leave. I'm going to leave this with you so you can fill it out after I'm gone. That being said, state law is really strict on making sure that you have signed and dated in the right spots. So what I am going to do is I'm going to have you sign and date it right now, just so we can make sure that your signatures and dates are in the right spot. And then you're going to keep it and you're going to fill it out after I've gone. So go ahead and boom, I get them started right there, right? So I'm handing her the pen and the paper and I get her started signing. Dude, let me tell you, the second you can get them to put pen to paper, and by the way, have this conversation with her, not with him. The second I can get them putting pen to paper, I've got them.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to get them taking that baby step. And because they know they're going to keep it, it's really easy for them to say yes to this. Okay? All right. Then you go into all your other paperwork, you get it signed. So let's assume that I've got the listing signed, I've got everything done. How do I wrap up this appointment? And there's so much more, you guys. I want to show you. And if you go to the video that's in the link, the 44-point listing presentation checklist blog post there. If you'll go to that video on there, I'll also be sharing with you scripts that I use about how I get on average 0.75 referrals per listing appointment. And there's some questions you can ask and some scripts that you can use. And 0.75 sounds weird, right? But if I go on 10 listing appointments, I'm going to get 7.5 referrals essentially. But it really works, and those referrals are gold. But that being said, after I've gotten everything done, the last thing I do is I take the key box and I take a picture of the serial number on the key box. That tells me that's the last picture for that house, and it also tells my staff the same thing. Next, I put the key box on the house. I take the insert out. If they don't have a key for me, and oftentimes they don't, then I take that insert and I show them how to stick the key inside, put it up inside there. Then, Noelle, do you know what I do next?
You put it right on the door.
I put it on the door. Then what?
I don't know what you do next here, Michael. It's kind of blowing my mind here.
The next step is really important. I freaking run. I don't walk. I freaking run to my car. I jump in like freaking Bowden, dude, sliding into the I jump into that sucker and off I go. And I tear out of that driveway around the corner. Why? Because the last thing I want to have happen is Mr. Seller approaches me and comes running out of the house. Oh, but Michael, we want to think about. Oh, heck no, you don't. You are not thinking about anything. This is my listing. And what happens is they'll call sometimes. Like I get around the corner and I get a phone call. If I recognize the seller's phone number and I have not gotten to my office to put it in the MLS yet, guess what I do?
Don't answer.
I do not answer. I ignore that freaking phone call. And then I don't care what I've got going on next. If I have another appointment, I will call my assistant, tell her to meet me at the next house. I'll have her take the listing, go put it in the MLS, and then I call them back, and here's the conversation. Hey, Noelle, it's Michael Hellickson. I just saw that I missed a call or got a message from you or whatever. Just wanted to see how I can help. And Noelle says, well, Michael, we want to think about it, blah, 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 blah. And I'll pause for a second and I'll say, oh my gosh, Noelle, this is terrible. You don't understand. Like, we've already put it in the MLS. If we cancel a listing now and pull it out of the MLS, people are going to think something's wrong with it, and it could adversely affect the value of your home. And we don't want to affect the value of your home, do we? Oh my gosh. Like, that would be such a problem, because all buyers are going to think is something must be wrong with that house. So, I mean, you tell me, I'll do whatever you want, but my recommendation would be we leave it in the MLS so that we don't scare off any potential buyers. But you tell me, what would you like me to do?
Yeah, they only have one response for that. Oh, fine.
That's exactly right. What's that? And what's the response?
Oh, fine, just leave it.
That's exactly what they do. And now I've got my listing. Dude, I got to tell you guys, you got to stack the odds in your favor. Now, I'm going to give you one last thing. Can we do 2 minutes, Noelle? Can I give you just,
yeah.
Okay, I'll make this fast. So there's one last thing I want to share with you guys. And this is really important. You guys, don't fall asleep on the listing appointment. Now, I know you're thinking, this sounds crazy, but of course I'm not going to fall asleep on the listing appointment. Well, let me tell you, I've done it. Okay. I've fallen asleep on a listing appointment. Here's how it happened. So I go on this listing appointment. It's late at night. It's 10 o'clock at night on a Thursday night, which is my Friday, right? Because I work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I take the rest of the week off. And so it's literally 10 o'clock at night. And yes, people will do listing appointments with you at 10 o'clock at night if you ask them, because you'd be surprised. Sometimes that's better for them too. So I literally was on this listing appointment. It was raining out. It's Seattle, right? It's October. It's gray. It's dark. It's, it's all rain coming down. And all you could see as I walked up to the house is the little glow of the window, right? Everything was black in the picture except for the glow of that one window. And yeah, I will use that photo to put it in the MLS if I have to. But it's only temporary, Noelle. We'll get a pro out there to take photos later.
First impressions. I don't know.
Hey. Listen, here's the thing though. Do I want a good first impression on my listing or somebody else? Like, would I take a bad first impression on my listing or a good impression on somebody else's? I just want my listing. So I'm taking the listing. That being said, they opened the door and I'm telling you, I got hit with this massive blast of warm, moist air. Like it was 3,000 degrees in this sweat lodge they call the house, right? I walk in, they've got the lights down low, they've got the fireplace going, they've got smooth jazz playing on the radio and incense burning. I kid you not. I'm thinking to myself, look, did I get here at the same time somebody else was supposed to get here? Because this is a little weird, a little bit of creepy, right? But they said, yes, you're here for the right reason. And so I get there, and let me tell you, the very first thing we did, I just barely made it through my walkthrough, struggled to get through my walkthrough, but I made it. And then after my walkthrough, they sit me down, and this was not good. They sit me down on one of those couches. You know the one. It's that couch that when you sit down, it goes, and it sucks you in. Dude, let me just tell you, oh my gosh. As we're having this conversation, I'm going through my listing presentation. I barely make it through the whole thing. I'm so tired. And I'm telling you, I get to my close and all I said was, are there any other? And I literally fell asleep in the middle of my close, literally. And all I remember is Mrs. Seller coming up to me, nudging me on the shoulder. Michael, it's okay. Wake up, go home and get some sleep. We're going to list with you. And I got the listing. So,
I believe it. I believe that could happen.
It was crazy. It really was. And it can happen. But you know what? At the end of the day, you got to control the environment. And had I controlled the environment, I wouldn't have fallen asleep on the listing appointment. So
you should have just asked them to get you a Diet Coke. That's all I'm saying.
Diet Coke. Oh my gosh. That's funny. I love it. All right. Well, good stuff. Well, hey, Noelle, did you have any questions or comments or anything before we wrap up? I know you've got to get rolling. You've got an appointment you got to get to.
I'm surprised you didn't say, Noelle, did you have any other questions today?
Are there any other questions before we get finished with the webinar?
No, this was fantastic. And I'm sure as people rewatch this, they may post questions in the comments and we can keep up with it. But thank you so much for all of this info. I'm definitely going to go on. I'm going to send my whole team to go on and watch this and download the presentations because this was really great.
Well, I'm flattered. I appreciate that. Thank you very, very much for that. And I apologize for doing all of the talking today or most of the talking today, but we got started a little late and I wanted to get as much in as we possibly could. So hopefully this was helpful to you guys. So jump over on our website, go to that link that's in the Facebook post there and download the free checklist. Here's what I would recommend. You're also going to carry a red pen with you on your appointments. So you got your 4 blue ones and 1 red one. Take the checklist and use the checklist the way I've written it. And then with your red pen, while you're on the appointment, just make changes to it to make it yours. And then when you hand it back to your assistant, they'll know that red means make a change to the actual checklist. And just do that. And then going forward, every time you're on a listing presentation, just make those little changes in red. And before you know it, you'll have a ridiculously dialed in presentation that is truly yours. And it will work very, very well for you. So there you go.
That's the redlining term. That's a legal term there. Did you learn that from a lawyer?
No, I did not. But now when you say redlining, the redlining I'm thinking of is when they used to draw a red line down the street. That's not a good redlining.
No, not that kind of redlining. No, it's a legal term. You cross things out, you edit, and you do it in red. That's how you know.
That's what you should do. Yes. It looks like we've got Johnny raised his. I'm not sure if Johnny's got a question. Johnny, if you could type that into your screen, it'd be easier for me to see that question in the screen there.
I do have one last question here. As somebody that's taken a few photos and has used a DSLR camera once or twice, you mentioned carrying the lockbox, but also taking photos with a DSLR. I need to see this in action, Michael, because I'm trying to logistically picture that. And,
So here's the key. I'll tell you exactly how it works. It's very simple. Do I have mine here? Hold on. Let me see if I got my camera and my strap here. Oh, it's tucked away in the bag there. But just imagine I've got the camera around my, it's got to be on a strap around your neck. It's really important because I've got to be able to let go of that and reach out and shake their hand, right? While I'm carrying my stuff. So then all I can do is reach over here, and I've got it set to autofocus. I'm not all fancy like Noelle. I don't know how to do all the fancy, settings and all this on thing. I'm on the green button. I've got an $8,000 camera that I use the one setting on because I don't know how to use the rest of it, right? So literally I just grab that sucker and I'm holding it up and I just click, 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 click. It makes me look like I know what I'm doing, whether I do or not, builds some credibility. And when I'm done, I just let go and it hangs around my neck. So.
Okay, that's believable. I believe you.
Super simple. So, and that's the key too, Noelle, is it's keep it super simple, right? I don't need to learn how to use a fancy camera. It's not, they got people for that and they're way better at it than I am. And by the way, it doesn't pay as well as what I do. So I want to focus on taking listings because that's what pays well.
That's true. It's true. That's why I'm here.
Exactly. Well, and that's why you're so well dressed. See, if you were not well dressed, if you showed up like a slob, you wouldn't take as many listings.
Well, about the dress, that's kind of my thing is you never know when you're going to get that last minute appointment with the one person that you wanted to be dressed up with. So dress up every day.
100% agree. 100%. So
all right.
Right on.
Thanks again. Have a great rest of your day.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being on with me today, Noelle. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.